Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why a certain smell can transport you back in time, or a taste can suddenly feel different just because of a description you read? Get ready to have your senses amazed, because today we're diving into how language doesn't just describe our world. It actually shapes how we experience it through our five senses. Think about it, we think of our senses as just receiving information like little cameras and microphones. But what if the words we use, the language we speak, is actively changing what we see, smell, taste, hear, and touch? That is the wild idea at the heart of this research. It is called sensory psycholinguistics, and it is exploring a really deep connection between our words and our senses. The researchers are basically asking, how does language act like a filter or maybe even a lens for our senses? They're suggesting that language isn't just something we add after we perceive something. No, it is actively involved in the process itself. It can boost our senses, help us learn new things, and even change how we interpret what is going on around us. Now, we often think of vision and hearing as the smart senses, the ones most linked to language. But this research dives into the senses we might think are less: verbal, smell, taste, and touch. And it turns out language has a surprising grip on these two. Let's start with smell. We know smells can bring back powerful memories, right? But describing them, that is often tough. Have you ever tried to explain what a specific floral scent or a complex food aroma is like? It is hard to nail down with words. In English, we often just say, it smells like X, or it is gross. We don't have a lot of specific words for different smells, unlike, say, colors. But this isn't true everywhere. Some languages have way more words for smells, and they use them like we use words for colors. This is a huge clue. If language can describe smells so well in some cultures, it suggests smell isn't inherently ineffable. So the big question is, can words help us categorize smells, even if the words don't mean anything specific? The researchers did a cool experiment. They took people who mostly speak English, meaning their smell vocabulary isn't super rich. They had them learn to group different smells. They gave participants meaningless made-up words like nahact to go with certain smells. When the same made-up word was always used for a certain type of smell, people got way better at sorting those smells. Even though the words were fake, just having a consistent label helped them organize the smells. It is like the word provided a scaffolding, a structure, for their noses and brains. But it is not always that simple. They found that if the made-up words sounded too familiar, like if they sounded like the person's native language, it didn't help as much. It was almost like the familiar sounds brought their own baggage and messed with the smell. This shows that context and how our brains are already wired by language really matter. And here is a really weird one: verbal overshadowing. This is where describing something can actually make you worse at remembering it later. Yep. If you try to describe a smell, you might actually mess up your memory of it. It's like trying to put a fuzzy smell into a rigid box of words. The words might not quite fit, and in trying to force it, you smudge the original scent memory. Now, let's talk about taste and flavor. Flavor is more than just what is on your tongue. It is a mix of taste, smell, texture, even sound. It's a whole experience. The researchers found that language's effect on taste is conditional. What does that mean? It means it depends. When the sensory signal is really strong, like when you are tasting real food, words don't change much. Your taste buds are sending a powerful message. They had people taste things like garlic and onions. But even though the words for these might be different across languages, the actual taste experience was so strong that it mostly swamped any language effect. Your taste buds are loud and clear here. And this is a big but: if the taste signal is weak, or you are just looking at a picture or tasting something totally weird, language kicks in hard. They even had a smoked salmon ice cream example. If you expect ice cream, you expect sweet. So when you taste savory smoked salmon, it is a shock. The label created a strong expectation, and that expectation twisted how you experience the actual taste. It shows how powerful our pre-existing ideas, guided by language, can be when that expectation doesn't match reality. It is fascinating how our experience changes. Just like with smell, describing flavors can mess with your memory. If you try to describe a complex taste, you might actually be worse at recognizing it later. It's like the verbal description interferes with the pure sensory memory. Okay, on to touch. This sense feels super basic, super physical. How can words possibly change how we feel texture or pressure? Again, English isn't great at specific touch words. We have smooth, rough, soft, hard. But languages like Japanese have these amazing sound symbolic words that describe textures with incredible detail. Think of words that sound like the texture itself. Can these words actually make us feel textures better? The researchers did an experiment where they had people learn to distinguish subtle differences in textures. They found that giving consistent, even fake word labels for certain textures made people much better at telling them apart. It is like the words help their fingers and brains lock onto the specific tactile qualities, making them more distinct. Even weirder, they tested spoken words against musical sounds. And guess what? Only the spoken words helped people feel textures better, even if the words were meaningless. This suggests it is the linguistic structure, the way words work, that's doing the magic, not just any sound. Now for sound, this one feels more obvious since language is sound, but the research goes deeper. It looks at how our language shapes how we hear non-speech sounds, like musical pitch. Think about how we talk about notes in music. We say a note is high or low using words about vertical space. But in other languages, they might describe pitch using words for thick or thin or strong or weak. The study found that if your language talks about pitch as thick or thin, that is how you'll tend to perceive it, even in nonverbal tasks. It is like your language is training your ears to link pitch to different dimensions. It's not just how we talk about sound, it is how we actually hear it. And this starts young. Children's brains develop these language-specific sound associations. What seems like a fundamental property of sound is actually tuned by the language you grow up speaking. They also looked at how we blend what we hear and see when people talk, the McGurk effect. You know, when you hear one sound but see lips move for a different sound, and your brain creates a third blended sound. Guess what? How strong this illusion is depends on your language. People whose languages rely more on visual cues for speech will experience it differently. Finally, vision, the sense we think is most direct. But words can tint what we see too. Remember how we said English has sparse smell words? Well, it is similar for touch and even some visual categories. But in languages with richer vocabularies, there is a difference. Studies showed that having a specific word for a color category, like Russian having separate words for light and dark blue, actually made people's brains respond differently when trying to distinguish those shades, even before they consciously thought about it. It is like the language boundary creates a perceptual boundary. Language can even affect how we break down continuous motion into separate events. French speakers, for example, might see more events in a moving scene than German speakers because of how their languages structure descriptions of motion. They found that simply having a language that obligatorily marks whether an action is finished or ongoing can change what parts of a motion event you pay attention to, even in nonverbal tasks. It's like language is guiding your gaze before you even realize it. And back to color, they found that while language can certainly influence how we categorize colors, especially when memory or decision-making is involved, it doesn't completely rewrite our basic color vision. Strong visual input and task demands can override language effect. One of the wildest findings is about negation. When you hear the coconut was not broken, it turns out your brain can actually simulate the unbroken state directly, not just process broken, and then flip it. Language can help us visualize what isn't happening. So, what is the big takeaway from all of this? Language isn't just a tag we attach to our sensory experiences. It is a powerful filter, a lens, a scaffold. It helps us organize fuzzy information, especially when the sensory input itself is ambiguous or weak. It can sharpen our senses, help us learn, but it can also interfere, especially when we try to force it into words that don't quite fit. It shapes our attention, our memory, and even how we categorize the world. Every sense we've talked about, smell, taste, touch, hearing, vision, shows us this dance between our words and our world. This research beautifully shows that our senses and our language are deeply intertwined. It's not just about what we can see, hear, smell, taste, or touch. It is also about the language we use to make sense of it all. It's a reminder that our perception is an active, dynamic process constantly being shaped by the words we use and the languages we speak. Now, what does this mean for you and me? Well, it's pretty mind-blowing. It means when you're trying to explain something complex, the words you choose aren't just for the other person. They're also shaping your own understanding and memory. It highlights how cultural differences in language might lead to genuinely different sensory experiences. And it makes you wonder, how else is language subtly influencing our reality? Moment by moment, it really is a testament to how powerful and intricate our minds are. What do you think about this? Have you ever had a word completely change how you experience something? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this mind-bending, give us a like and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more explorations into the fascinating world of psychology. Until next time, keep questioning everything.